The look on my brother's face was priceless when I projected the hidden files from his gaming PC onto the big screen during our family reunion. His perfectly crafted image crumbled in seconds as everyone saw the doctored will, the fraudulent bank transfers, and worst of all, the blackmail material he had on half our family. How did you get those? He stammered, his face draining of all color. That's when I knew I had won. But let me back up and tell you how I uncovered one of the most elaborate family betrayals you'll ever hear about. My name is Alex, and until 3 months ago, I was just a regular 28-year-old software developer who thought he had a normal family. When my grandfather passed away, I expected his estate would be divided equally between me and my brother Jason, as he had always promised. Grandpa built a successful construction business from nothing, and while it wasn't billions, it was enough to set both of us up for life. But when the will was read, somehow I got nothing. Zero, zilch, nada, while my brother inherited everything. Something wasn't right. You see, I was always Grandpa's favorite. Not to brag, but everyone knew it. I spent weekends helping him in his workshop, learning about his business, while Jason could barely be bothered to visit. So when the lawyer read that, will stating, "I leave all my assets to my grandson Jason, as Alex has chosen a different path in life," I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. Those weren't my grandfather's words. Anyone who knew him would know that. But wait until you hear what I discovered next. The day after the will reading, I went to my grandfather's house, now legally Jason's house, to collect some personal mementos. While there, I noticed something odd. My brother had already moved Grandpa's antique desk into the master bedroom and set up his gaming PC on it. The same gaming PC I had actually built for him last Christmas. The same PC that I knew inside and out because I custom built every component. As I stood in that doorway, something clicked in my brain. You know that feeling when puzzle pieces suddenly connect? Jason had barely waited 24 hours before moving in, and something about his smug confidence didn't sit right with me. I remembered how he'd unexpectedly visited Grandpa several times in his final weeks. Unusual for someone who typically avoided family obligations like the plague. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about Jason's sudden inheritance and his suspicious behavior, and then it hit me. I had built that gaming PC. I knew its every weakness, every backdoor I'd created when setting it up. My brother might be cunning, but technology was my domain. I made a decision that would change everything. I was going to hack into my brother's computer. Was it legal? Absolutely not. Was it the right thing to do? You'll have to judge for yourself by the end of this story. My plan was simple but required perfect timing. Jason was predictable. Every Wednesday night, he played poker with his friends downtown. That gave me a solid 4-hour window. I waited until the following Wednesday, parked my car 2 blocks away, and walked to the house with a backpack containing everything I needed. The spare key was still hidden in the fake rock by the back door. Some things never change. I let myself in quietly, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might burst through my chest. The house was dark except for the blue standby light from Jason's gaming rig upstairs. I moved silently up the stairs, each creak of the old wooden steps sending shockwaves of anxiety through my body. When I reached the master bedroom, I paused to listen. Empty house. Perfect. I approached the gaming PC, a custom-built monster with RGB lighting illuminating the darkness like a spaceship. I pulled out my tools and got to work. Now, I'm not going to give you a step-by-step guide on how to hack someone's computer. That's illegal and unethical. But let's just say that when you've built a system from scratch, you know all its vulnerabilities. Within minutes, I was in, bypassing his password using a backdoor I'd intentionally left when building it. The irony wasn't lost on me. The PC I'd lovingly created as a gift was now my weapon for justice. But guys, I wasn't prepared for what I found. Not even close. The first thing I discovered was a folder hidden deep in the system files labeled Inheritance. My hands trembled as I clicked it open. Inside were scanned documents of my grandfather's original will, the real will, dated just 6 months earlier. In it, Grandpa had divided everything equally between Jason and me, just as he'd always promised. There was also a scan of the fraudulent will that had been presented by the lawyer, and, this is where it gets crazy, a series of emails between Jason and the lawyer discussing how to forge Grandpa's signature and how much the lawyer would be paid for his role in the scheme. I felt sick to my stomach. My own brother had bribed a lawyer to fake our grandfather's will. But this was just the beginning. Remember how I said Jason had blackmail material on half our family? I wasn't exaggerating. The next folder I found was labeled Insurance and contained subfolders with the names of various family members. Inside each was compromising information, evidence of our cousin Emma's tax evasion, screenshots of our Uncle Robert's affair, photos of our Aunt Patricia visiting a plastic surgeon, despite publicly claiming she was all natural. Nothing horrifically damaging, but certainly embarrassing enough that no one would want it shared. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely use the mouse. This went beyond stealing an inheritance. Jason had been systematically collecting dirt on everyone in our family. But why? What was his endgame? That's when I found the business folder. And guys, what I discovered next blew everything else out of the water. Jason had been using Grandpa's legitimate construction business as a front for money laundering. The documents showed connections to some pretty shady characters and detailed how cash was flowing through the business, being cleaned, and coming out as legitimate income. This wasn't small time either. We're talking millions of dollars. My brother, who I thought was just a greedy jerk, was actually involved in organized crime. I sat there in the dark, the blue light of the monitor illuminating my shocked face, trying to process everything. This was so much bigger than I had imagined. I needed evidence, solid, irrefutable evidence that would stand up in court and in front of our family. For the next 2 hours, I methodically copied everything I could find. Every incriminating email, every doctored document, every shred of blackmail material, every transaction record. I couldn't risk sending it over the internet, so I copied it all onto an encrypted external hard drive I had brought with me. Just as I was finishing up, I heard it, the sound of a car pulling into the driveway. Headlights swept across the bedroom wall. Jason was home early. My heart nearly stopped. I quickly closed everything, removed all traces of my presence in the system, and unplugged my hard drive. I could hear the front door opening as I slipped the drive into my backpack. There was no time to get out through the front or back door. He would see me. The bedroom window was my only option. I silently slid the window open and looked down. It was about a 15-foot drop to the bushes below. Not ideal, but I didn't have a choice. I could hear Jason's footsteps on the stairs as I climbed out onto the ledge. With a deep breath, I jumped, landing with a muffled thud in the bushes. Pain shot through my ankle, but adrenaline pushed me forward. I limped away as quickly as I could, keeping to the shadows until I reached my car. The drive home was a blur. My mind was racing faster than my car, trying to make sense of everything I'd discovered. My brother wasn't just a thief. He was a criminal mastermind who had been manipulating our entire family for years. And now I had proof. But what should I do with it? Going to the police seemed obvious, but with the lawyer also involved and potentially other powerful people connected to the money laundering, I wasn't sure who I could trust. This had to be handled carefully. I spent the next week planning my next move, analyzing the evidence and creating backups of everything. I consulted with a trusted friend who was a criminal attorney, keeping the details vague but getting enough advice to proceed. What I needed was to expose Jason in a way that he couldn't wiggle out of, in front of witnesses who would hold him accountable. and that's when I had the perfect idea. Our annual family reunion was coming up in 2 weeks, a gathering of about 30 relatives at our aunt's lake house. Jason always attended, playing the role of the successful, charming nephew. It would be the perfect stage for his downfall. I spent those 2 weeks preparing a meticulous presentation of everything I'd found. I organized the evidence, created slides that clearly showed the timeline of fraud, and practiced how I would present it all. I also took one crucial step. I sent a copy of everything to my lawyer with instructions to deliver it to the authorities if anything happened to me. I wasn't taking any chances. The day of the reunion arrived. I showed up early to set up my equipment, telling Aunt Susan I had prepared a slideshow of family photos as a surprise. She was delighted and helped me connect my laptop to the large TV in the living room. As family members arrived, I greeted everyone normally, including Jason. If he noticed anything off about my behavior, he didn't show it. He was his usual charismatic self, working the room, making everyone laugh. Little did he know that his carefully constructed house of cards was about to come crashing down. After dinner, when everyone was gathered in the living room, I stood up and cleared my throat. "Before we move on to dessert, I've prepared something special," I announced. "A presentation I think everyone will find illuminating." I clicked the first slide, which simply showed the title, "The Truth About Grandpa's Will." The room fell silent. I could feel Jason's eyes boring into me from across the room, but I didn't look at him. Not yet. 3 months ago, we were told that Grandpa left everything to Jason. I began, my voice steady despite my racing heart. That didn't sound like the grandfather we knew, did it? The man who always talked about fairness and equal treatment of his grandchildren? I clicked to the next slide, showing the 2 versions of the will side by side. "This is why it didn't sound right," I continued, "because it wasn't true. On the left is Grandpa's real will from his safe deposit box. On the right is the fraudulent will that was presented after his death." Gasps filled the room. I could see confusion and shock on everyone's faces. Jason stood up abruptly. "What the hell is this, Alex?" he demanded, his voice a mixture of anger and panic. "This is the truth, Jason. Please, let me finish." I continued through my presentation, methodically revealing each piece of evidence. The emails between Jason and the lawyer, the forged signatures, the money trail. With each new slide, the tension in the room grew thicker. Some relatives were crying. Others were staring at Jason with undisguised disgust. But I had saved the best for last. "And now," I said, clicking to a new section, "let me show you why Jason went to such lengths to gain control of Grandpa's business." It wasn't just about the inheritance. The money laundering evidence appeared on screen. Bank statements, suspicious transactions, communications with known criminals. The room erupted in chaos. Our Uncle William, a retired police officer, stood up and moved toward Jason, who was now backing toward the door. "There's one more thing," I said, raising my voice above the commotion. "Jason has been collecting information on many of you. Blackmail material." I didn't display the actual blackmail content. I wasn't there to embarrass my family members who were also victims. Instead, I showed redacted versions that made it clear what Jason had been doing without revealing the sensitive details. "This stops today," I declared, looking directly at my brother for the first time. "All copies of this evidence have been sent to the authorities. It's over, Jason." The look on my brother's face in that moment, that mixture of rage, shock, and defeat, is something I'll never forget. He looked around the room, perhaps hoping to find an ally, but was met with only looks of betrayal and anger. "You have no idea what you've done," he spat at me, before turning and storming out of the house. Uncle William followed him to ensure he didn't flee before the police arrived. I had called them just before starting my presentation, and they were already on their way. The aftermath was both devastating and cathartic. Jason was arrested that night. The lawyer who helped him was picked up the next morning, The investigation into the money laundering operation is still ongoing, with more arrests expected. As for the inheritance, a judge invalidated the fraudulent will within weeks, given the overwhelming evidence. Grandpa's estate was divided according to his true wishes, equally between Jason and me, though Jason's half will likely go toward restitution and legal fees. The family is still healing from this betrayal. Some relationships may never be the same, but there's also a sense of relief that the truth is finally out, that justice has been served. I often think about what drove my brother to such elaborate deception. Was it simple greed? A desire for power over others? Or something deeper? Some wound from our childhood that festered over time? I may never know. What I do know is that sometimes you have to break the rules to expose the truth. Was hacking into my brother's computer illegal? Yes. Would I do it again? In a heartbeat. Because some betrayals cut so deep that only the cold light of truth can begin to heal them. It's been 6 months since that family reunion. I've used my share of the inheritance to start a cybersecurity firm, using my skills to help people and businesses protect themselves from people like I was that night. I guess there's some irony there. Jason is awaiting trial, facing charges of fraud, forgery, money laundering, and blackmail. He still refuses to speak to me or take my calls. Part of me hopes that someday, years from now, we might find a way to reconcile. The rational part of me knows that's unlikely. Sometimes I wonder if I could have handled things differently. Was there a less dramatic way to expose the truth? Maybe. But when someone betrays not just you, but an entire family's trust, sometimes dramatic is exactly what's needed. So if you're watching this and facing your own family betrayal, remember, the truth has a way of coming to light. It might take time, it might take courage, and it might even take some morally questionable computer skills. But justice usually finds a way. Would you have done what I did? Let me know in the comments. And if this story taught you anything, maybe it's to be careful what you store on that computer of yours. You never know who might be looking.